Hello, my name is Jeffrey Downing, and I will be talking about image colorization using convolutional neural network. So this project aims to explore how CNNs can be used to add color to black and white images. So some applications include restoring historical photos, which can help make them look more engaging. Color can also be added to photos taken in low light environments like security footage. So colorization is a challenging problem. It requires some contextual and domain knowledge in order to accurately color images. And this project is mostly focused on coloring two types of images, those being dogs and landscapes. And my research question is, how does model architecture and dataset bias impact the performance and generalization of CNN-based image colorization? So image colorization dates back to photography itself, back in the 1800s. Some artists would manually paint color onto images themselves, or would use some processes like photochrome. But nowadays, colorization is mostly done through software. And so while the actual act of coloring a photo is easier than ever, ensuring accuracy is still a challenge that requires contextual knowledge as well as a lot of research. So, for example, in order to properly colorize a tribe's clothing, you will have to do some research on their traditional colors. Another example includes branding. So a certain brand could have used different colors in the past than they do today. So for example, 7-Up's logo used to be colored red, but an artist today colorizing this logo may have accidentally colored it green using their modern day colors. As well, the Eiffel Tower, before it had finished construction, was painted a Venetian red as opposed to the color that it is today. So, knowing this, our models could struggle in the same ways. CNNs cannot exactly do outside research like this or use external knowledge to guide their decisions. It's all based entirely on its training set. So, this could induce some biases into the model where it's more prone to use modern day color patterns. So, that's one thing to watch out for. Two datasets were used for this project, the dogs versus cats dataset from week 5 of class, as well as a landscapes dataset from Kaggle. Included in the code zip file are 80 training images, 10 validation, and a handful of testing images for both categories. If you just want to ensure that the code runs, then you can open up the underscore code file and run that as is. If you want to reproduce similar results to what I did, you will need to download the datasets and follow the code in the data setup notebook in order to collect the subset of 1,000 training images that I use to train. And so in order to do that, what you'll want to do is create a folder called data in the same directory as the notebook files. Then you'll go ahead and download the two datasets. So for the dogs versus cats.zip file, you'll want to extract the training.zip file and then extract the training folder and place that in the data folder. For the landscapes dataset, you'll want to download that and just extract the landscape images folder and also place that in the data folder. And then run all the cells in the data setup notebook, and you should be good to go. Afterwards, you can run the underscore code notebook. So for my first model, I decided to train on a set of 1,000 dog images using an overcomplete autoencoder. Each layer had 3 by 3 convolutions, and there was a large amount of nodes in the bottleneck. A grayscale image was used as the input for the model, and 3 color channels, the red, green, and blue, were used as the output. Unfortunately, the results are, as you can see, non-existent. The model failed to reconstruct the image and was only able to reproduce a brown box. It appears that we're asking a little bit too much of the model. It has to not only create colors, but it also needs to completely reconstruct the image from scratch. And so it's clear the model was just not able to do that. So I had to try something different. So while researching, I thought, well, okay, does the model need to completely reproduce 3 different colors? We do have the grayscale image, so perhaps we could only have to reproduce 2 colors and get the third color from the grayscale image itself. And it turns out there is a color format that does exactly this called the lab color format. So the L in lab stands for the light channel, which would be the grayscale image. And then there are 2 color channels, A and B, representing the red-green and blue-yellow axes. So this way the model can now focus on only reproducing colors as opposed to having to also reconstruct the image. And so this model ended up performing much better and produced some okay results. So from my testing, I found that usually the model would pick a reasonable color for the dog, but it would end up coloring all the backgrounds green, regardless of what was there. And it seems like a lot of images in the training data had grass in the background, green grass in the background. So it appears the model picked up on that and just ended up painting most backgrounds green. So here you can see the first one, the model's output. It attempted to color the dog brownish gold color, and then it painted in some of the grass as green, but the model was completely unable to color any of the cars in the background. For the second image, it actually performs really well. So here we just have a dog in a grassy field, and yeah, it painted the grass green and the dog a nice gold color. So here's some more test images. The model's not perfect. It did end up painting some green onto the dog itself, and it didn't really attempt to color in the background at all. And then the last image, there's a dog sitting on some concrete, and the model just painted all the concrete green. So for my third model, I decided to try and make the model architecture itself a little more complex to see if that could help improve some of the results. So I decided to incorporate the skip connections seen in the UNet architecture. So the outputs of each encoder block will be concatenated to the respective block in the decoder. And so this can allow the model to reuse any information it had earlier or that may have been lost through the encoding process. Despite this change, the model performed worse than Model 2. It used way too much green, applying green on the dog itself, and it just wasn't able to improve in the way that I wanted it to. So I chose to abandon this architecture and stick with the simple one. So it was clear to me that these models rely heavily on their training set in order to make predictions. So this time I decided to try a different data set. I looked online and found a data set on Kaggle for landscapes. And so this included things like beaches, oceans, forests, as well as urban buildings. And so my goal with this model was to see if the architecture was able to learn the colors of each different environment. But unfortunately, the model struggled to learn the colors of each, and just sort of defaulted to using blue and yellow tones regardless of what the environment was. So here you can see an image of a forest with lots of green plants, but the model was unable to color it in and just colored it in a brown color. So here's a couple of other examples. The first is an island. The model did attempt to paint some of the water around it, but didn't really do that well and didn't paint the island green at all. In the second image, we have an urban road with a red brick building in the background, and the model tried to paint it yellow. It also tried to paint some of the concrete on the road blue. And then the last image, we have a snowy mountain. The model painted the sky blue, but it did paint some of the snow blue as well. So for my final model, I wanted to see if a transfer learning architecture could help alleviate some of these problems and help the model identify more patterns. And so I ended up using the VGG16 encoder, and then I would extract one of the blocks and use that as the input for my decoder. And so I froze the VGG16 layers, and so only the decoder was trained. And while the results are not perfect, the results did improve significantly. The model was able to start using other colors other than blue and yellow. So it's clear the model was able to start identifying different kinds of environments. And so you can see that the model was able to color in the forest using greens. It ended up painting the bottom of the image brown, but it probably assumed that that was just dirt. But overall, it's an acceptable colorization. The model does perform better on the second image with the brick building. It was able to start using some reds to fill that in, although it did end up spilling some blues on the road. So it seems like there's still a lot of improvements that could be made to this model. The model still had some difficulties with coloring in the ocean around the island, as well as the snowy environment, but it did notice that blue was a key color in these. So it seems that transfer learning did allow the model to identify more features, and it allowed the model to learn more colors that are associated with different environments. So in conclusion, here are some things that I learned throughout my journey. So an overcomplete autoencoder works well with identifying color patterns, but increasing model complexity might not necessarily improve the performance. Utilizing the lab color channel helped the model focus on predicting just the colors as opposed to having the model have to reconstruct RGB images. Models are highly dependent on their training set, making generalization outside of the training domain unreliable. Transfer learning, in particular, can help improve the performance of models trained when there's a bunch of different types of images in its training set. So for some future work, I would start by expanding the size as well as the diversity of the training set to allow the model to learn a variety of different features. I would experiment with tuning the VGG16 layers instead of freezing them. And the last thing I would like to do is to incorporate some form of human guidance to the model. So this could be a way of allowing the user to specify certain objects in the photo as well as what colors they should be. So thank you very much for listening to my presentation, and I hope you have a good day.